Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Frank Turchan, Campus Executive Chef, Michigan Dining. Today we're going to make Missouri River Pozole. Simple, very hearty dish, nice time for fall. Some simple ingredients that we have laid out in front of us. We have a simple butternut squash, hominy, low maple syrup, and then some fresh sage. And then at the end we'll add some cornmeal to garnish or tighten up the broth. What we have right here in the pot is just some chicken stock. You can use the vegetable stock. During the fall, it'd be nice after Thanksgiving, and you have any turkey bones, you can make a nice turkey stock with that. It'd be really good. And then you can garnish with that afterwards. So basically right now I have a simple butternut squash that I've peeled. We can cut it down. You need about a 1 inch to ½ an inch dice, depending on how big you want them. There's no one judging you. Let's just have fun and cook some great vegetables. So I just cut them like this. Make sure your fingers are tucked in. And then cut them into nice squares. Once they're all ready to go, we can put them right in this stock that we have available. We'll cut a couple of these up and we'll put it right in there. I just grabbed some butternut squash today from here at the Maize and Blue cupboard. And so we're just using some of the vegetables from the campus farm. So we'll put some of those in there and let them cook a little bit till they're nice and tender. There's a couple ways you can do it, and our recipe is using dry hominy. You can soak those overnight. It's a nice corny flavor, sweet flavored kind of grain. But we use a canned one today from the cupboard, and we'll just add that right to the broth. We'll add a little bit more in there. Just gives it a nice, hearty, flavorful stock. So we'll let that simmer right now. We also have some fresh sage. Obviously, probably during Thanksgiving, you had this around for your stuffing or your turkey or your gravy or whatever vegetable dish you saw on TV that called for sage. So we'll just pick it right off. And we'll just put a quick chop on it. It's a nice flavor, nice floral arrangement, or floral flavor, excuse me. Put that there. It is strong, so please don't use a lot of it. It goes great with this chicken stock and the squashes. We'll just kind of slice it up just a little bit like this. This is just a fine julienne, nice cut. Very simple. We'll leave that right there for right now. Wait till our squash cooks a little bit more. This time of year, definitely look for a nice maple syrup. Nice, you can get some here in the local area. Again, it's for stew if you have some around, because you like to make pancakes, French toast, or anything that syrupy items. Make sure you can add that to there. Again, we'll talk about this. This is one of my favorites, and this is a nice item. Cornmeal. I use this for different stews, especially in the hearty time, but I also use this for chilies. Chilies add things to the flavor. It's a corn base, so it helps with the gluten-free folks. Tightens up really well and adds really nice flavor to the stock. So as the stock and the vegetables and the squash and the hominies kind of cooking together, I'll add in the fresh sage. It's kind of coming to a nice simmer. We'll just sprinkle this in, let it stir for a bit. As it's cooking, there's a nice aroma. The hominy brings off a really good flavor. Same with the butternut squash. What we'll also do at this time, as it's coming to a boil, we'll kind of just drizzle in some maple syrup just to see how flavor-wise and bring some acidity and some sweetness. We'll stir it around a little bit. One of the things that, like I mentioned, I like to use is the cornmeal. It helps tighten things up and thickens the soup. It brings a really nice flavor, a little bit more normal than the traditional or classical roux, or people use potatoes to thicken it, but this brings out a nice flavor. The corn kind of lightens it up and gives it not so much of a rich cut flavor, but a nice, sounds weird, sounds corny, but corn flavor to it. So as you see, it's coming to a simmer. We're gonna just slowly shake this in. You'll see as it starts to tighten up. We'll whisk it in. And this depends on how thick you want it, how light you want it. You know, obviously in the fall, you want a little bit more thicker and harder your stew or soup. Just let it slowly cook and just kind of whisk it in. Do not just dump it in, because if you just do a quick dump into it, it just clumps up there and then it's really hard to get out. But if you just slowly whisk it in, kind of let it rain on top of the stock and the mixture as you're slowly stirring it in, it'll start to tighten up, and just let it cook. This is a good time to see what other kind of garnishes on there. There's different varieties or different items that you can put on there. If you have any rotisserie chicken that's left over from some event, or some cooked chicken or cooked meats, you can sprinkle that in, put it in a little bit more heartier. Or if you want to add some rice or grains, there's a variety of nice stuff here at the Maize and Blue cupboard. I mean, you can add some beans to it just to make a nice heartier stew and stretch it out a little bit longer. We're just gonna add a little bit more cornmeal, and then we'll just dish it up and we're ready to go. There we go. It gives a really nice yellow flavor color to it. You're just gonna let it simmer until your butternut squash is nice and tender. And then you'll have a nice bowl, a nice available bowl, a nice deep bowl. Keeps things nice and warm, makes a heartier dish for you. And we'll just give it a quick stir, make sure everything's coming together. The hominy, the butternut squash. You can add a variety of things. Actually really great this time of year is some Swiss chard, some kale, mustard greens, collard greens. Just chop those up, put those in there. Probably about 10 minutes before it's ready to go. And then we'll just kind of ladle this out. Get some hominy and butternut. Use whatever tool you have available to scoop it out. Nice low flavor. Get some of that sage in there. And again, I didn't fill it all the way up because if you have some leftover chicken or meat or any kind of stuff you want to put in there, or some grains, you can put it on a nice garnish to color it up. That is the Missouri River Pozole. It's a great dish, nice hearty dish, good thing for this time of year. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. My name is Eliza Jarman. I am the Culinary Nutrition Support Specialist for Michigan Dining Services, and I am a registered dietitian. And today I am going to be talking about eating well for less. So how to eat healthy on a budget. I'm going to start this presentation by talking about the basics of healthy eating. So I kind of came up with 5 key terms that we'll go through on healthy eating. So we'll start with variety. So the key to healthy eating is eating a natural rainbow of foods from all food groups. So notice I said natural there. I'm not talking about food coloring or food additives that change the color of your foods. I'm talking about natural foods, colorful fruits and vegetables. These vegetables or fruits, or whatever type of food it is, get their color pigmentation from the various micronutrients. So eating a natural rainbow of foods will ensure that you're getting a variety of micronutrients. So those vitamins, minerals that are all essential to our well-being. And then focusing on whole grains, but eating a variety of whole grains. So this might look like, rice, and then quinoa, amaranth, barley, maybe whole wheat pasta, or, whole wheat breads, whatever your preferred grains are. But making sure to focus on those whole grains rather than the processed, like white bread or white rice that we're seeing in the grocery stores. The whole grain provides many more essential micronutrients than the processed form of that food. Another key to healthy eating is choosing lean meats. So, if you're eating an animal protein diet, that might look like chicken or fish, salmon, whitefish, or maybe pork. Those foods that are lower in saturated fats. Red meats are okay, but they are higher in saturated fats. So focusing on lean proteins is important to a healthy eating. And then if you're choosing plant-based proteins, that could be tofu or tempeh, maybe, beans, nuts, legumes like lentils have a great source of protein. So focusing on those lean proteins. And then choosing lower fat dairy products. So dairy is another great source of protein. However, with dairy comes a lot of saturated fat. So maybe choosing that skim milk or 1% milk, or Greek yogurt that has that reduced fat, and then low fat cheeses. And then lastly, and I will say this probably repeatedly, you can never have too many veggies. So, if you look at the standard American diet, what it's really lacking in is vegetables, where you're so focused on, getting that protein in that we don't pay attention to what's lacking. So make sure to eat as many veggies as you can. The next key term that I want to talk about in regards to healthy eating is nutrient density versus caloric density. So calorie-dense foods are foods that contain a higher number of calories relative to their weight. So this might include things like cake or cookies or chips or candy or, those quote-unquote junk foods that provide calories, but they're not necessarily providing any essential vitamins or minerals. And then nutrient-dense foods contain a lower number of calories, but a higher number of essential vitamins, minerals, fiber, lean protein, and other beneficial nutrients relative to their weight. So this includes fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, legumes, things like that. And I just want to note here that there are many foods that fall into both categories here. So for example, nuts, they're pretty calorie dense. They're higher in the calorie range, but they're also nutrient dense. They have, some healthy fats. They have a lot of great micronutrients and vitamins and minerals that are essential to our well-being. So this is not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's, there's a lot of overlap between these two terms. And another thing I want to say is that while we're focusing on nutrient-dense foods, there is room in a healthy diet for all foods. So I am not the kind of dietitian that's going to tell you to cut out any of these calorie-dense foods. If you're craving that piece of cake, have it. It's Halloween time right now, so if you're surrounded by Halloween candy, let yourself have the pleasure of, having a piece or two. All right, the next key term that I want to talk about is amount. So our standard American serving sizes are huge compared to what they used to be, and they're just increasing and increasing. So some ways to kind of get around that and be a little more mindful about our serving sizes are using a smaller plate. So a lot of times we fill up our plate no matter the size. Using a smaller plate will ensure that you're eating a smaller portion of food, which might actually be what your body needs. Eating mindfully is another great way to watch the amount of food that you're eating. So on the right side of this slide, there's a few tips and tricks for mindful eating. One great way is slowing down when you're eating, taking nice, slow bites, chewing thoroughly, drinking more water while you're eating, remembering where your food comes from. So remembering that your food comes from a farm or, your apple is grown on a tree. Wherever the food comes from, that's a great way of reconnecting with our food. And then don't eat straight from a container. So if we're eating right out of the bag of chips, we're a lot more likely to eat more chips than if we're portioning out one portion in a bowl. So using dishes to portion out your foods is a great way to monitor the amount of food that you're eating. And then lastly, and this image on the right side of the slide is a great example of using your hand as a guide for portions. So for example, if you look at your hand, your palm is about the size of a 3 or 4 ounce portion of, a grilled chicken breast or a salmon fillet. That's a great way to portion out one portion of protein. And then if you squeeze your hand into a fist, That's a great way to measure out about 1 cup of vegetables. That's 1 serving of vegetables. If you, kind of scoop your hand into a little cup, that will portion out 1 portion of carbs. That's, a quarter to a half cup of carbohydrate. That can be, whatever grain or starch that you're eating. So maybe it's rice or quinoa. And then lastly, if you, give a good thumbs up, the size of your thumb is about 1 tablespoon. And that's a good way of measuring out of fat. So if you're cooking with olive oil or canola oil or, whatever fat you're cooking with, that's using your thumb as an example is a great way to portion out 1 tablespoon. The next key term I want to talk about is pattern. So when we're thinking about healthy eating, it's really, really hard to look at our overall diet. A lot of times we get so caught up in looking at that one thing. Maybe you had a piece of cake at a birthday party yesterday and you're feeling guilt over it. But, healthy eating is all about your overall dietary pattern. It's not about the specifics. So look at your overall dietary pattern. What kind of foods do you eat a lot of? Maybe you're eating a ton of protein. The standard American diet really focuses on protein and does not put an emphasis on vegetables. So maybe you're eating a ton of protein or a ton of, grains, like a lot of pasta, but you're missing something. So what kind of foods are you missing in your diet? Maybe you're missing those veggies. Maybe you're missing, fruit. Maybe you're not eating any dairy. Notice what you're missing and then see if you can kind of alter your overall pattern to fit into a healthy eating diet or a nice balanced diet. And my plate is a good example of what a plate should look like. So having half that plate filled with either fruits or vegetables or a mixture of both, a quarter of the plate being filled with a grain, and then a quarter of the plate being filled with your protein. And then don't get caught up in the particulars. Don't be mad at yourself for eating that piece of birthday cake. You were celebrating. There shouldn't be no guilt over food. So this brings me to the next slide, or the next key term that I want to talk about, moderation. So food should always be pleasurable. There's plenty of room in a healthy, balanced diet for those pleasure foods. So that Halloween candy or that birthday cake, a healthy, balanced diet can most definitely include those things. The key to healthy eating is frequency, portions, and overall quality of diet. So paying attention to, how frequently you're eating, how much you're eating, and then what are the foods that you're eating? What are you missing from your diet? What are you eating too much of? Look at the overall pattern. And then lastly, I just want to quickly highlight that a lot of times guilt begets overeating. So there's kind of this cycle of, dieting or restricting a certain food and then depriving your body of it. A lot of times that will lead to overeating or binging because, your body's craving that food and you're not listening to it. And then this can lead to guilt for, breaking those rules or that diet or whatever you were restricting. And that can lead to unhappiness with our weight or our shape, which again can lead into that cycle of dieting and restricting. If you are interested in intuitive eating resources at all, I've listed a couple of them at the bottom of this slide. I'm really a fan of the Food Psych podcast. Christy Harrison does a great job about explaining this guilt, diet restricting cycle, and then talking about how to overcome that and how to eat intuitively and listen to your body. All right, now I'm going to transition to healthy eating on a budget. This is our game plan. So step 1 is to plan. Now, I know everyone is not a planner like I am. However, food is a very important part of our lives. So we should take the time to plan it out, especially if we're trying to eat on a budget. So start by creating a rough outline for everything that you want to eat during the week. Make sure to include your proteins, your veggies, your starches or grains, whatever it is, make sure it's in there. And then set aside time on your calendar for food prep. So we're not afraid to set aside time for our classes or our Zoom calls and meetings, But food, again, is very important. So maybe block out a chunk of time on a Sunday for your designated food prep time. Whenever it is that fits into your schedule, make sure to block it out. And then look for recipe inspiration. Maybe you're a super creative person in the kitchen and don't need a recipe. I don't know about you, but I definitely need recipes to follow. So there are millions of recipe websites out there. Maybe start by looking up a certain cuisine or a certain dish that you like. But you'll definitely be able to find something out there. I've listed a few good recipe websites at the bottom of this slide just to get you started. Budget Bites is a great website, and it actually lists the price of each dish per portion, which is really, really helpful if you're trying to plan it out and follow a strict budget. Step 2 is shopping. Some people hate grocery shopping. Some people love grocery shopping. It can be a pain in the butt, but it can also be really fun. So for shopping on a budget, make sure to pull up sales ads for your local grocery stores and pay special attention to proteins because that's typically the most expensive part of your meal. If there's any, coupons for a certain protein that you're looking for, great. Just make sure to pay attention to that. And then look for seasonal items. A lot of times you can save money on seasonal items. Sometimes they're from local farms, depending on where you're buying it from. It's a really great way of lowering your carbon impact because the food is coming locally and it's in season. That's awesome. And then consider where you're shopping. So the typical grocery store versus farmers markets versus, specialty markets versus membership stores or, delivery services. There's so many options out there these days. There's a lot of things to consider with each option. So a typical grocery store, like, for example, Meijer or Kroger, there are pros and cons to each. So a lot of times there's good pricing, a large variety of products. Sometimes it's harder to get those local products or seasonal products. Specialty markets like Whole Foods or, co-ops are awesome because they have unique items available. However, they can be very, very spendy. So something to pay special attention to for sure. Farmers markets are great because you're getting local produce. It's seasonal. A lot of times there's good pricing. But another thing to pay attention to is seasonality is not always a benefit. If you're looking for a certain item and it's not in season, then you're probably not going to find it at the farmer's market. And again, you're only going to find local items. So it's not going to have as much variety as, your typical grocery store. And then there's membership stores like Costco or Sam's Club. And these are great because their pricing can be very low, but you're also buying huge case sizes. So if you're just shopping for yourself, sometimes it's really hard to buy the appropriate amount of food. And then lastly, delivery services are super convenient. However, a lot of times there's a delivery or subscription fee. So all pros and cons to think about when you're grocery shopping for your meals. Step 3 for healthy eating on a budget is to get cooking. So this is where we focus on creating well-balanced plates for each meal, making sure to include our protein, our fruit or veg, and our whole grains. Something to consider is preparing in bulk and then freezing or, just preparing just enough for the week. I prefer to prepare in bulk and freeze because I'm kind of a lazy cook and a lot of times I come home and I don't want to cook anything. So I'll just pull something out of the freezer, warm it up, and there it is. And then consider your cooking methods. So a slow cooker is super, super handy if, you don't necessarily have time to sit there at the stove or the oven and prepare your meal. You can kind of throw everything in a crock pot and let it cook on its own. You don't have to pay attention to it. I'm all about the lazy cooking methods, so that is totally up my alley, but It's up to you. And then think about variety. So do you want to eat the same thing every day, or do you want to switch it up and have a different meal every day? So maybe you prepare a couple different veggies, a couple different starches, and then you can kind of throw your chicken with each mix and match dish. Next, I'm going to be talking about money-saving tips and tricks at the grocery store. So firstly, reduce food waste. Try to buy perishable foods in quantities that you will actually use. Try not to buy too much and then throw it away, because that's just money going, in the trash can. It's okay to split up bananas or grapes at the grocery store, or those, pre-bagged apples or pears. You can split those up if you need to. Buy in the quantities that you will use, but try not to buy in excess. Make sure to take inventory before you head to the market. So note what you have in your pantry or your fridge. Maybe cross it off your grocery list so that you don't accidentally buy something that you already have. Try to buy non-perishable items in bulk. So, for example, buying oats in bulk rather than individual servings of oatmeal packets is a great way to save money. And similarly, buying dried beans or dried rice in bulk. These things are shelf stable, they'll last a long time in your pantry, and buying larger quantities will save you money. Try to shop seasonally and locally if possible. This will not only save you money, but it also helps stimulate your local economy. So it's a win-win situation. And if it is large quantities, remember that you can freeze it into smaller portions. Foods. So ready-made foods can be extremely pricey because you're paying a higher price to have someone else prepare your meal. These are foods like the ready-to-go meals that you pop in the microwave that you can find in the freezer aisle. Try to stick to your list. So I am absolutely notorious for impulse purchasing at the grocery store, and that is not budget friendly. So try not to go to the grocery store hungry. You'll probably end up buying things that you don't need. And then also clip coupons with caution. So while coupons are absolutely great for shopping on a budget, they also persuade you to purchase things that you generally wouldn't buy or that you don't need, or that weren't on your grocery list. So make sure to use coupons smartly. And then buy frozen and canned veggies when possible. There's kind of a negative stigma surrounding frozen and canned veggies, but it's really no less nutritionally dense than fresh vegetables, and they're shelf stable. They're also a great bang for your buck. So a lot of times you'll see like a 10 for 10 deal on frozen veggies. Load up on those veggies. They last forever in your freezer. They're not going to go bad, and they'll save you money. Another way to save money when grocery shopping is focusing on plant-based proteins. So a lot of times plant-based proteins are a lot cheaper than animal-based proteins. They're equally as nutritious, especially things like tofu or beans or nuts. They have a lower carbon impact, which is awesome if you are interested in reducing your carbon impact. So maybe try swapping out a chicken breast for a can of beans, maybe once a week. See how it goes. And then lastly, get scrappy with it. So figure out how to use your veggie scraps. One thing that I do is save all the veggie cuttings and peels that I don't use, put them in a freezer bag, pop it in the freezer, and then once that bag is full, put it in a pot of boiling water and make a nice veggie stock that you can use for soups. Another thing that people do is use your broccoli stalks for broccoli soup. And then remember that you can mince and freeze leftover herbs as well. So all great ways to save money.